Okay, so we've looked at what test-driven development is. We've seen demonstrations of developing in a test-driven fashion, and we've also had a go at that as well. We then went on to look at how we go about creating code which is testable, which is a good design. And we also looked at ways of testing systems using third-party libraries or other code which isn't naturally testable too. So what we're going to look at in this section is some test principles. So principles that we should follow which are going to make sure we keep our tests in a good state too, which are going to keep our tests maintainable and going to make it easy to continue developing in a test-driven fashion as effectively as we can. Okay, so the guys at Object Mentor came up with a really good acronym which is useful to describe good principles you want to look for in a test. This is described by the first acronym. We'll look at each one of these in turn now. So the first one of these is fast. Tests should be really quick to run. If your tests are running slowly, if they're taking a while to run, then developers aren't going to be in a position to run them frequently. You want to be running your tests before every check-in, before you commit any code. So it's really important that these remain quick and easy to run. If not, I've seen developers move tests out into different sections. So you'll have run the everyday unit tests, then you'll have a test target which is run less frequently because it's a lot slower. But the problem with this is, because people aren't running them very frequently, when they do break, when there are issues with those tests, it's a lot more involved to go back and work out exactly why they're failing, why they're breaking. And then gradually these tests receive less and less maintenance over time until they're really not useful anymore. At which point you're back to square one again, so you have to start writing those tests again. It becomes a big effort to maintain slow tests. Okay, the next principle is independent. Tests should be independent from one another. You should be able to run tests in any order. You don't want to end up in a situation where you have to run a certain number of tests in order to get the right system set up that make a subsequent test pass. And also, one test failing shouldn't cause subsequent tests to fail in your system as well. Sticking to this principle makes it a lot easier to work out why tests are failing when certain tests fail. With tests that are complex and intertwined, it will make it really difficult to maintain your test setup. You won't really know what state the system is in when you come to writing your new tests. Okay, also, tests should be repeatable. So no matter what environment you're running in, your tests should still perform in the same way. So any developer should be able to check out the code and run the unit tests on their machine. You don't want them to have to do special setup just to get them to run, because this introduces risk in your tests. If your test suddenly starts failing on one machine but not another, then is your code really broken, or is the environment just wrong in some subtle way? It also means that if you have some kind of continuous integration set up, where you've got a server automatically running your tests, if you start seeing test failures on that system, then if your tests aren't repeatable, it always casts some doubt over to the validity of those test results. Okay, also, tests should be self-validating. Now, what this means is that tests should, quite simply, pass or fail. You don't want your tests producing output which then has to be later analysed by someone in order to work out whether the system's behaving correctly or not. You don't want to be exercising the system and then wading through logs the next morning just to work out whether it's done what it should have done or not. You want a simple red light or green light for all of your tests. Either it passes or it fails. On to the final principle here, the T. T is timely. So this is about when you're writing your tests. So we're talking about test-driven development. So what we're saying is you should be writing your tests before the production code. You should be using tests to drive that application code. As we said before, this is going to provide real benefits as it forces you to write application code which is tested. It forces you to think carefully about requirements. And it means if any issues do arise as you're writing those tests, as you're developing your code, you're in the ideal position to do something about them early on before the cost of debugging the system becomes too much.